So we're going to go to the very, very start. How did you find track cycling? Did it stem from other forms of cycling and go to there, or was it other sports and then you go to you hit a uni or you hit a club and somebody goes, oh, we do this thing over here? Because I know not every high school has a velodrome. So
yeah, it was jet. So for me, it was a family link, right? So initially, my granddad was mad cyclist. Like he'd go out for even into his sort of early 70s. He'd do like 100 miles over the weekend or something. And as a kid, that's like you're just looking at this like your granddad is this hero.
My granddad was a god.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then so then my dad did it as well, a bit more competitively than my granddad, who just like did it for the love of riding his bike. In fact, I'll jump in with a story. It'll be an interesting one for the podcast. There was when my granddad he was in the military. When he met my nan, they met at like a dance, like a military dance, where he was stationed in Stotfold, which is near where I grew up in Bedfordshire. And but his family were up in Liverpool, and that's where he was originally he was living and coming from. And he'd ride from Liverpool to Stotfold in Bedfordshire, which is like south of south of Milton Keynes, Bedford kind of way, 50 mile north of London. So he'd do that ride like overnight if he had to get there in time.
A couple of 100 miles.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous, and he'd do that just to get there in time for the dance when he was when he'd been taken away from his station. He was back at home. He'd commit to from the end of work, getting on his bike, riding down to the dance, and then that's how they met and got on. So it's kind of been like probably my family wouldn't have been together without a bike, right? It wouldn't have even happened. So from there, my dad did it as a competitive cyclist, not professionally, but at a good like a really high level. There used to be like grass track racing used to be a massive thing at country fairs and things like that before they got the sheepdogs and things like that, but that was definitely before the cycling. And then going back and then coming back to me, I was always on the TV around the house and everything, and I guess they waited for me to ask, and I could take some interest. I saw it and said, like I'd like to give that a go. I started off doing road racing or like road cycling and mountain biking. They were the easiest things to get into. Mm-hmm. I realized I was only ever good at them when they were short. So I went to track, and then I realized I was only ever good at track when it went really slow and ended in a sprint. So then I went to sprint cycling when I was about 16. I was doing it for about 3 years, and then realized I was only ever good at that when it was like just going off of the start line and like as explosive as possible. And that's kind of by training that, I was in a niche position, and that's kind of got me the go ahead green light to join Team GB then when I was 19. I didn't get on academy at all when I was younger. Applied every year and I just never quite met the level. But eventually, after going to uni, dropping out, giving it a go full time for a little while, I finally got on the squad when I was 19, and I've been professional for 6 years now, 6.5 years. So.
Congratulations! Sounds like you got the last laugh over the academy lot.
Some of them are with me now, so not like I've just been kind of blended into the team. Yeah.
I thought you meant the coaches. I was like, do you ever just walk past them and go, "Not bad for a kid who couldn't cut it at like 17"?
There's some still involved, yeah.
I always think that was like when I think of like rugby scouts and things like that. It's like you hear about players that got cut. Like Hugh Jones from Scotland is a famous example. He got cut. He was on a gap year. Got picked up by a South African professional rugby club. Like, you're great. What are you doing over here? And so you must just think like if you're the age grade, like every time he walks through the corridor, you must just put your head in your hands like, oh no.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Like, I've had some people. To be fair, I've had some really interesting conversations where someone's actually just come up to me later on and gone, "I'm really sorry, I was completely wrong about you," and like that really almost caught me by shock because you don't hear people kind of admit when they made a mistake that often, like especially directly to the person, but like really respected that when it happened. So I mean there's a lot of stories of that, and sometimes it's just time and place and fit. You needed like I joined along with a new coach and 3 other people, which was the biggest academy intake they'd had in years. and it was just a fresh start, and they had a different viewpoint, and I kind of aligned more with that viewpoint at that point in time. And yeah, it's crazy to think how close it came to not even happening, but I'm very glad it did. So
there's a book, and I spoke about this with Callum, Callum Cirker in the Blokes chat. I spoke this with him, and there's this one book, and it's all about the chance, and it goes down to little things such as like, what you don't know is you could live on a house in a street that is the division point between a school with a high uptake for sport and things like that, and you could be sent to a completely different school and never follow that path. So
yeah,
it's like when you think of all these little things that make up an athlete, there's so much, not luck, because nobody ever gets to the Olympics or a professional sports person by luck, but there is just chance that's involved.
Things have, 100% things have to go your way somewhere along the line. Like even your parents, you have to have parents that are interested in driving you across the country to races and things like that. It's not like some of the more popular sports like football and rugby, where you could have a local club that you could join just down the road, and then they compete against other local clubs within like a half-hour radius or something like that, and that would be your first chance. Like there's, especially at the time, there was two indoor tracks, Manchester and Newport, both a 3-hour drive away, and the rest were like outdoor tracks, maybe an hour drive away, that half the time you'd go and it would rain and you'd just be sat in the car all day. So yeah, it was you had to have some committed parents as well as kids, passionate kids that to find that channel to get to this point. It's amazing if you think about it, that just all the things that have to go in your favor along the way to make it a reality. So
and shout out to mums and dads as well. Kids will never appreciate it at the time, but when you get to like our age, you'll look back and think, mum and dad did a lot of like unnecessary work for themselves purely on behalf of their kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was in tennis. I did tennis until I was like 14.
Oh yeah.
And the amount of tennis sessions they took me to, and then one day I just said, "Nah, I've had enough of this. I want to do cycling." And you must think, how could they do that? Like, I've invested all of that time.
Your mum's holding like a new 400 quid racket, being like, "Oh, that's nice."
They never really second guessed it. So they were great like that. But yeah, it's you get that perspective when you get a bit older, and you start thinking about it a bit more. It is incredible.
Well, shout out Mr. and Mrs. Owens. You've turned out a GB athlete, so the drive was worth it. Do you ever think you could race the car now? Do you ever think like off the start line, you're like, I reckon I could get to about 40 kilometers faster than them?
Well, I think definitely not 40 kilometers, right? And it also depends on the car. I think I could take like a beat up Suzuki van or something. I don't think I could. I don't think I'd stand much chance against much else. But there was a stat that everyone loved going around a little while back, that in like the first rev, where like a track sprinter will put out more torque than a sort of entry level Ferrari or something like that. I think it's like 450 Newton meters or something. Not power. We get like 1 horsepower at best or something like that. That'd be good going. So
please just put that as your new Instagram bio. More torque than a Ferrari in the first.
Like someone like misquoted it and said more power than a Bugatti once, and they got ripped to shreds. So I'm not gonna tread close to that.
I'll just send this in. Just like, you see when the Olympics come around, I'll just do some retagging. I bet you wouldn't believe what Ryan Owens said.
Yeah, just cut that out. Yeah.
Nothing beats a sports headline than a 3-second podcast clip taken completely out of context. Where could those possibly go wrong?